Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone who can hear the sound of my voice to this week's edition of the Petty and Ill-Informed podcast, where we use our petty and ill-informed opinion to look at some hilarious tales. Joining me, as always, from the sunny slopes of Ireland, Kevin.
Righty-o there.
That's good. From England, Tom.
All right, everybody.
And ladies and gentlemen, we are in for a treat because the flakiest woman in the world has joined us, Miss Flaky herself, Nikki. Welcome.
Hey.
She's like a pie made with Crisco.
That's right. So flaky.
Oh, flaky.
And me, of course, from my neck of the woods. So how are we all doing this week?
My neck of the woods.
Unbelievable.
All's well and good.
So, well, is that it? Usually you guys go off on tangents. All right. So Tom,
you want me to go off on a tangent?
She's going off on a tangent.
Yeah, go on, Nikki.
No.
Go for a tangent.
No, you know the mood I've been in. No.
Tangent.
No.
All right then. Okay. So, Tom posited something good in the Discord group this week. The word privilege. Is it something people like me need to take into account and be not so fast when forming our opinions, or something used by people claiming victimhood to silence a voice of reason? Hail Hitler. That's what Tom wrote exactly in the group.
Yeah, I think we can forget the last two words, but otherwise, yeah, that's pretty much word for word. You're probably reading it off the page. I was hoping to sort of do that full justice and make it an official topic for another week. So we won't go into it now. If that's, well, I wasn't planning on going into it now.
We're going into it now. You know that. You can't
Yeah,
stop
it's been
it.
brought up.
Yeah.
You had your chance for a tangent. You ignored the tangent.
Hey,
So now we need a topic until we discuss the other topics. So go.
you took your eye off the ball, Sisyphus. And
Okay.
now it's rolling down the hill.
Okay. Well, okay, then for what it's worth, my thoughts are we live in a complex world and there's always exceptions to every rule. But generally speaking, I do think it is completely valid to state that as a, white male, cis, straight, basically, I have encountered, favorable unconscious bias and stuff like that in ways that I wouldn't have even known were there.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think there is a lot. It is complicated, and somebody could easily argue me down very quickly if they were so inclined. But, well, I'm sure they could. But overall, I do think it is very, very much worth considering those kinds of things. One feeling that I have a sort of heard somebody say and really try to digest is the idea that there's a limited empathy kind of thing. It wasn't put to me in those words, but to say things like what, say, a black person or person of color in, downtown Los Angeles might experience is not something where I can say, oh yeah, that must be terrible or something like that, because you don't know the nature of that sort of feeling. I've spoken to somebody who lives there in that sort of place about a year ago, and they've articulated to me the sense of fear you get when police cars are passing you by, and things like that are just not something I can do justice with and say that I empathize with. I sympathize, but just to recognize that there is a huge limit to which I can imagine what that person is going through or what their experience of it is like. And that's something that I think is very much worth us all remembering in our different ways. We all experience life very differently. And I have no doubt that there are definitely hidden privileges, or sometimes not so hidden privileges, that I carry. And it's very much worth walking with a sense a healthy sense of respect is basically where I think I'm going with this.
Well,
A healthy sense of respect.
well,
Yes.
I mean,
Well put.
do you think? And I'm going to take it. I mean, because I am from the island of Ireland, I'm going to say something here. Maybe it's not going to go very well. But I do want to say, from the standpoint of that historically over time, uh, when does that go away? Because uh, you know, for a long time, Irish folk in Britain were not considered to be people, if you understand what I mean. If you look at the idea of sort of Jonathan Swift making the sarcastic remark about that Irish people were like dogs, and you shouldn't worry about the potato famine because whatever, or we'll just make more, and all those different things. When you go to that um, point, you do sort of understand what people are talking about. I mean, there is an unconscious bias sometimes when you go to London and you speak with a Northern Irish accent. I've talked about that before, where I've been in a pub and said something really, really loud in a Northern Irish accent, and everybody looks like they're going to hit the floor, like I'm going to commit a jihad right there. Because they're so afraid of Irish folk in a way. So, I mean, I've been in that situation in a way. I mean, I'm not saying that it's equivalent to other people's situation, because you can get away with pretending you're not Irish. You know what I mean? You can't get away with pretending you're not black. I understand that. But, for a long time, minorities in America, for example. I mean, I remember when my mom emigrated to America in the 60s, and somebody in Indiana said that they would rather hire an N than an Irish person because at least they're not drunks and they work hard. You know what I mean? So, um, that kind of idea of that comes and goes. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I still think it's a socioeconomic issue rather than necessarily a color issue, at least with white folk um, from poor neighborhoods and things like that. I mean, I think that this is where you get a lot of the kickback from that, Tom, is because of the fact that if you are white and you're living in Appalachia, I mean, there's a chance you don't even have running water in your house, or you don't have this or that. Your education is shite, and all those different things like that. And they would say, well, why are you cherry picking experiences for this person? So you get I mean, for example, the county in America with the poorest amount of white people in it is the most Republican county there is in a lot of ways. And you would say to them, even though you're looking at it from a standpoint of, I've always made the comment that there's two groups of people that are Republicans in America: poor people and really, 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 really rich people. And you need the poor people to make up for the fact that the rich people exist. So you bait them along with things like gun rights and abortion things and all those different things that people are single issue voters on, so that they continue on basically getting tax breaks for rich people and stuff like that. I mean, that's an oversimplification, of course, but if you look at it from that standpoint, this is where I think a lot of this racism is coming back, because of the fact that people will look at themselves as a specific group. If you start to label yourself as a group not American, you say, oh, okay, I'm a gay American, I'm an African American, I'm this kind of. I mean, you're opening yourself up to situations where things go on. But I mean, this is part of the thing as a history teacher, where you do know that at one point in time, to be an Italian American was a terrible thing. To be a Jewish American was a terrible thing. To be anything other than a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant was a terrible thing. And that didn't really go away for a long time. We never subjugated them to slavery. Slavery was a horrible thing. To own another person is a horrible thing. So yeah, you're right. There's no depths to the amount of not understanding that. But from a standpoint of, if you were living in Whitechapel, for example, in the East End,
Yeah.
at the turn of the century, you would know what it was like to be afraid of the cops. That's just the way it was. I mean, and so you come out of that and say, maybe I don't feel that way, but certainly some of your family members did. So I think the point of empathy comes from the fact that you can realize, okay, at one point in time, unless you were the aristocracy, it was probably shite to be an English person too. And so, I know you don't live like that now, but the problem with that is that we believe in a sense of rights and things like that. I mean, you don't necessarily ever see black people standing up and saying, "Oh yeah, this is America." I've got all these rights. Where sometimes you throw. I mean, you don't. It's a funny thing. You don't ever really see a black Karen, do you? But you see white Karens all over the place because they've got this misplaced sense of self-importance. But but uh, but in the end, whenever it really comes down to it, is not affluence what gets you off on these. I mean, we talk about court cases all the time. And there's a court case in America now that's got to do with these people in South Carolina that are richer than rich. You know what I mean? And the guy is accused of killing his wife and his son. And there's a good chance he's going to get off because he's richer than rich. So that's the weird part of it. And then we never consider in the fact that affluence really is what gives you that sense of entitlement, really. Although we do act entitled, but we're not. I mean, but we're acting entitled about stupid things. We're acting entitled about whether I got the right drink at the Starbucks or something. We're not really acting entitled about rights or something like that. Although basically, if you're in a higher socioeconomic area, you don't have to get away with that. Now, you do get into situations where people would say, you're not supposed to be in this part of town, like Trayvon Martin case or something like that. He's not supposed to be walking through this neighborhood, so I feel threatened because the guy has a juice and a candy bar in his pocket. I'm going to shoot him, and get away with it. That's a different thing. And that's why I mean, I don't know what it's like to be a black person and or a minority. But I do know that in that case, it is a terrible thing. But when do we? That's the thing where we're always trying to honor all these different groups and their traditions and everything like that. And unfortunately, whenever you make groups that want to honor somebody's tradition, we have other groups that want to be pissed off because they have traditions and maybe they don't, they're not going along that way. I mean, this is why, you have groups that the BNP and the British National, Party and parts of Republicans that are really, really white nationalists, and they're unapologetic of it because basically they see brown people as taking away their jobs because there's not enough jobs. That's the issue. It's a every time there's a downturn in the economy, there's always a rise in racism. I mean, that was true in the Depression. It was true in other times. This is the thing. When you start to have society take away people's economic standing because somebody else is coming in and doing it, then this is where you have this huge problem. But the person I think that would probably be the best to talk about it is Nikki, because she lives in a very racially diverse area. That's poor.
That's
Well,
very. I do. I have a very You were correct in the like back in the day, if you were Irish, if you were Italian, you get pulled over by the cops. Super scary. Nowadays, not so much. Um, Generally, it's people of a more brown persuasion. And a lot of the times when they're talking about privilege, it's the fact that white people, when you take into account population, when you take into account population and crimes, white people commit the same amount of crime, well, generally the same crimes at the same rate. If you are going, okay, black people are the minority, they're this percentage, they do this amount, same amount of crime, same rate. Why is it that black men, especially, are apparently just terrifying to the point where like, seriously, me as a white person, yes, I get afraid that the police are going to pull me over because now I just think a lot of them are just flying off the handles. Um, but I never lived in fear before that. That's something black people always have to take into consideration, is that they've been seen as lesser for so long.
Mhm.
Like most people, you can't look at them and go, "Oh, they're Italian. Oh, they're, you know, Irish, whatever."
Well,
Um,
I think that the thing, Nikki, too. I mean, and if you, I mean, a lot of this has to do with, and unfortunately, the way that we get our news, or we used to get our news. If you looked at the amount of crime, and you're right, the amount of crime by a white person is is the same. Obviously, serial killers are usually white males. Mass gun shooters are usually white
exactly,
males,
exactly, right. So
and
if
we're not afraid of white males. But when we
right,
used to watch TV photo fits on the local news back in the day, it was always a black guy. It was black guy this, black guy that, black guy. I mean, and if you go back and you look at um, the way that the local news used to portray uh, crimes by race in America, it was always black guys. It was always, you were looking for a black guy. If there was a crime by a black guy, that was definitely going to make the news. And and so I think that one of the things about it is that the media sources at the time, because I think that was so it was a way to get people to talk about it, and it was a way to scare the shit out of people, because I think that realistically, there's two motivations in life from a standpoint of if you break it down to the obvious, it's love and fear. And you do something either out of love for something or out of fear of something. And so, as long as you could get people to fear black folk, then you've succeeded something, because then you'll act. You'll continue to keep watching. If it was
right,
all about, if you turned on the news and it wasn't about some mass crime or something like that. I mean, they always end the news with what, and now for some lighter news, this dude
yeah,
petted a dolphin or something. But if
right,
you've got 29 minutes in front of that, or of rape and murder and everything like that,
right. That
this,
3 minutes doesn't really
yeah.
do much to
Uh,
help you. And also, I think when we talk about privilege as well, like you were talking about, like you've got poor white people that have like no running water and crap education, but like what we've done to the black community and the brown community and people of color and whatnot is the HOA. They came in to essentially make the ghettos, to make it so that they were underdeveloped. um it's just a systemic, pushing down. And I'm sure that as an Irishman, like you understand that too, because back in the day, like you said, you were the exact Italians and Jewish and all of that. They were, well, not Jewish generally. I think by that time they weren't as badly. They had already kind of taken over their own bit. They're more respected. But anyway, Italians and Irish people, they were kind of band over to that ghetto kind of area as well, a lesser
Yeah.
than. We're going to make sure that you guys don't get good jobs. We're going to make sure that you guys are over here with your little group. Your taxes go to pay for your education. Guess what? You don't make good money, your taxes suck, you don't have good education, and then it's just like that's where you really have to in a like a more right side way of say like pull yourself up by your bootstraps essentially, because now like literally the entire system is pitted against you
Right.
just because of the color of your skin. The moment
Right.
you popped out, you have these systems in place to
Right.
make sure that you don't make it. And a lot of people do, and it's freaking awesome. It's just an indication of how hard you work.
Right.
And, but
Well,
not everybody is even given the ability to have that sort of discipline, because that's kind of not always an inherent skill.
right.
So,
Do you think that, and this is part of my thing too, if you look at it from the standpoint of Italians and Irish folk in America,
mhm.
and the fact that, back in the day, in the 30s, during Prohibition, you would rather be afraid of an Italian or an Irish person because they were basically running those different things. But do you not think that part of the thing about it is that in a way, Hollywood then gave Italians and Irish people a sort of a pass? You know, like whenever The Godfather came out, uh, the idea of, they'd say, oh, well, we don't sell drugs. We don't do this. Oh, we're just running booze and we're just doing protection rackets and all those different things. But we don't sell drugs. And then next thing you know, that the whole idea of everybody who sells drugs is a black guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Right.
so,
Well, and also, but if you think about it, so the Jews did make their stake, and even the Italians and Irish people too, in Hollywood. And it was because I think back then, and you might want to fact check me, back then that whole industry was considered lesser.
oh
And
yeah,
they kind of made it what it was today. So
hmm,
they took that kind of, well, this is a shit gig, and turned it into what trillion-dollar industry. Like, I don't know how much they make, millions and millions and millions of dollars. And I say the Italians and Irish too is because, the mob was heavily involved in the entertainment industry for a
right.
really long time.
I mean, that's
Probably still to this day. I
right.
mean, Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra, they were caught up with some baddies, man. Even Jerry Lewis, and he writes about it in his book.
Yeah,
Like back in the day, if you wanted to perform at the Copa, you had some friends,
right.
you know.
But I think that that's one of those things where I mean, because even though you watch movies like Casino, where you've got a guy's head in a vice and he's trying to pop it, for some reason, that's okay because that's just. I mean, that's over
Right.
with. People don't
Right.
do that anymore, and this is the thing, and blah
But
blah
but
blah
they
blah blah.
do.
Yeah.
They
No,
still do.
of course they do, and
Absolutely.
it's
They
and Irish
still
people sold drugs, and
do.
so did Italians and everything like they're the only ones that had money to import it, and they had ways to get it in. So now you're selling things like that, and then cocaine comes in, and then you've got a lot of brown people importing it and other brown people selling it, and all these different things, and you can look at, and somebody figured out in San Francisco how to make crack by mixing cocaine with baking soda or something and cooking it on a stove and all this other stuff that you know you could do all that. I mean, that was ingenious in a way, but it does come down to the fact that neighborhoods then became places of crime, and then you don't have police that go into that. I mean, nobody wants to go into that neighborhood, or if they
Yeah.
do, they're nuts. They're psychos, that want to go in there and prove that I can beat down a black guy. I mean, in a way, this thing where the guy just got killed in your town, um, by six black officers. It's not a racial thing, but it's a power imbalance thing. You know
It's
what I
a
mean?
power imbalance thing. It's the fact that we've militarized the police as well, and kind of made them scared of their like they had every right to be scared. It's freaking terrifying. I absolutely would not want to be a Memphis police department. Like I wouldn't want to be a Memphis police officer. Period. Like
Yeah.
I just never would. It's got to be terrifying. But there's other factors that go into that as well. There's a lot of rumors going on that maybe he was sleeping with one of their wives. um, it wasn't racially motivated. It is 100% a power dynamic issue. It is 100% the fact that they are not really being taught to serve their communities as much anymore. It's more like, ah, that guy looks scary, and now you're scared, you know? And
Right.
generally it's a blackmail. But I mean, like, I don't know if you remember, I don't know, probably like 7 years ago, uh, there were there was a man that was killed inside a Vegas hotel because supposedly he had a gun. He didn't. They had him get down on his hands and knees and crawl towards them. And the entire time the guy said, "I will shoot and kill you. I will shoot and kill you." The guy's pants went to like they were falling down. The guy's obviously terrified. He's sobbing. And he, out of instinct, reached up to pull up his pants, gets shot.
Yeah.
Like they kill him. But the guy was already dead set on killing him. He was
Right.
already terrified. He was already dead set on killing the dude before the guy even got on the ground to crawl towards him.
Right. Well, that's that Clint Eastwood. Give me a reason. You know,
Exactly. And
give
that's
me
and
a
I think
reason.
I think there are great cops, but there are also a lot of cops who, first of all, they're joining the profession as a person who's going to abuse that power.
Wow. You know,
You know,
I feel sorry. I mean, in a lot of ways, police officers, they never draw their guns in anger. You know, statistically, they never have to shoot anybody.
exactly. That's very
But
true.
so they're dealing with something on a first time basis. You know that I mean. So you're in that where you're in a situation where this is the only experience that you have, and you think that if you mess it up, then that's it. Then that's me. That's me not going home to my wife, or that's me
Yeah,
not going to that.
and
And so
sometimes that freaking happens.
so
I mean,
you overreact. So sometimes you overreact. I mean, I think that those things happen in war too, but you just
yeah.
never hear about it because that's
Yeah.
an enemy combatant, and
Yeah,
if you
and they
decide,
generally don't have body cams where you
yeah,
can, you know, like I watched one guy get blown away. I watched the entire video because I just had to know. And the guy flat out was like, "Hey, I gotta get my wallet. It's
yeah,
in my side pocket." He leans over very slowly and slowly reaches in, and the dude just blows him away in front of his wife and his kid.
yeah. Well, I
And
mean, that's
he was telling him, like, "Yeah, you can go get your wallet," but like he slowly reached to it, and the dude just, I don't know, freaked out and blew him away. It's
yeah,
very stressful, but there's got to be some kind of like psychological thing that they could go through, some kind of therapy, some kind of conditioning,
yeah,
something to make them
right,
stop that. I mean, Navy SEALs go through some serious conditioning to stop that trigger panic reaction.
right, yeah, but
They
yeah, you're right.
they
You're right.
train it out of themselves. I mean, because, you know, you're literally in 20 feet of water and some dude just came down and totally beat the crap out of you and disconnected your scuba gear, and you have to stay down there and get it all back together so that you can breathe.
Right.
Like, I'm not saying we should do that to the police, but that's why Navy SEALs are able to stay so calm under pressure. They've conditioned their brain to not react in that way.
Yeah. But if it was on TV, where that's what they should do. They should just make all cops go through that and then put it on TV.
Put it on TV.
You know what I'm saying? It's like today's water day, and then
Today is water day.
they should have a bunch of black guys swim down and beat the shit out of.
It's like therapy and
Yeah.
training.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, Chandler Halderson. Speaking of therapy, this man needs it.
I think it's a bit beyond that now.
He is absolutely.
This, as Nikki has pointed out, is Chandler Halderson. Nice looking kid. He is actually a nice looking kid in his defense. But he's also a very working hard kid. He had a lot going on in his life. He was part of a scuba rescue squad for a police station. He had a job.
Oh my God.
Selling insurance. He was completing a master's degree at university. He was also tasked to be part of Elon Musk's SpaceX program. He was moving to Florida, and he was going to start working on shuttles and space stuff. Isn't that fantastic, guys? What a kid. What a legend. Had so much going on in his life, right?
Overachiever.
Overachieved. That is definitely Chandler. Chandler's here. He was definitely an overachiever. He had some hashtag first world problems, of course. For his college were dragging their feet about sending the transcripts, so he couldn't prove that he was studying for his master's degree. And his job with the insurance company couldn't pay him due to a cock-up with his payroll and bank account. This had dragged on for months. And, Chandler, he had a couple of good-natured, decent parents. So his dad got involved and started trying to help Chandler get his transcripts and get his pay slip sorted out. This ended with Chandler's father calling the college that Chandler was attending and talking to this school to help get a copy of it. This call did not go well. The college apparently had no idea who Chandler was, as Chandler had not been enrolled there for some time and had not completed any credits. I'm sure Chandler's parents were working really hard to get to the bottom of this mystery, but unfortunately they were murdered soon after that phone call. They just vanished without a trace. Well, that's a lie. They were brutally murdered and then cut up into pieces and scattered across the county. There's a sad story. Chandler, of course, being the overachiever that he was, worked hard with police law enforcement to locate his parents. According to him, they'd got into a van with some people who he didn't know and got off to gamble and celebrate the 4th of July weekend, even though that neither of them were gamblers or drinkers. So, but all was not in vain. His mother's phone had been texting him, so the police were able to ping the cell phone tower to get a location for his mother. It was coming from the house where Chandler was living. So this is just another mystery to add to the layers of mystery that's just building up here. There's also the fact that Chandler said that he was out, going door to door, but his girlfriend said that his Snapchat said that he was in the middle of nowhere doing by a forked tree. The police went to investigate, and that's where his mother's torso was discovered. More mysteries. He asked his girlfriend's parents if he could use their pool. They said, yeah, sure, knock yourself out. When they went back to the pool, he wasn't there. He emerged several hours later looking disheveled from the woods and jumped straight into the pool. Didn't actually go for any swim, appeared more to wash himself off, and then drove home. The police investigated this and discovered the remains of his father and eventually the murder weapon that killed him. So you might ask yourself, hang on a minute, Richard. It looks to me as if this overachieving super genius kid murdered his parents for some unknown reason and scattered their remains across his home state. And I'd say to you, yeah, that's how it looked. But why, Richard? He had everything going for him. He had a master's degree. He had a good job. He was going to work on space stations. Well, as it turned out, none of that was true. In a twist of absolute absurdity, and it all came out during the trial, he had made all of this up. He hasn't got a job in insurance. That's why he wasn't getting paid. But he was going through the motions of someone that had a job. He was waking up early. He was getting his friends on his computer to hang out with him. And so it was like business meetings whenever his parents came to check on him. He had forged transcripts. He had even set out email addresses to email himself from himself the progress on his college and job applications, which God, the amount of effort he put into it. Surely it would have been simpler to get an actual job. But now I haven't even got to the funniest part. Obviously, texting himself from his mother's phone, that was a good idea. If it actually gone anywhere and done that, that might have panned out to somewhere. But obviously, his parents were getting deeply suspicious of him with no money coming in and none of his transcripts. And the fact that his whole moving to Florida thing just seemed a bit far-fetched to him. He was obviously struggling to come up with excuses. So one fateful day, he threw himself down some stairs in an attempt to frame a concussion. And then he started wearing a neck brace around the house. No doctor told him to do this, I might add. He simply just started wearing a neck brace and said, yeah, I got a concussion. I can't do anything. I'm going to have to cancel that job in Florida. Parents. So the running theory is that, his parents discovered his web of lies and he murdered them out of shame. He had a to-do list. One of the reasons he was so easily convicted. This isn't one of those cases where the prosecution half-assed it. The prosecution, crossed their T's and dotted their lowercase J's on this one. They really went above and beyond. They investigated every single avenue, and the prosecutor's opening statement and case is devastating. But he had a to-do list. He was going to murder his parents for the insurance money. He was going to set the crime scene up to make it look like he had nothing to do with it. The third thing on his list was literally get a job. And if he'd just done that in the first place, he wouldn't have needed to do anything else. So, yeah, I've told a few lies in my time. I'm not going to lie. I'm sure, at some point everyone's told a lie or two, except for Nikki, of course. But,
yeah, I'm so honest all the time. I never lie.
Spinning such a web of deception that my only option is to murder someone is just a bit alien to me. And the worst thing is, Chandler's parents were, by all accounts, decent, hard-working folk. I mean, they'd have been mad at him, don't get me wrong, and he might have had to live under much stricter conditions than he was before, but I'm pretty fucking sure they would have helped him through this. They would have been like, all right, son, you've messed up, but we're going to help you. And if he'd just listened to them, he'd be living a much better quality of life. Instead, he's obviously in jail for the rest of his life. He was found guilty. Of course he was. It wasn't a question of, how much evidence have they got? It's what kind of evidence. The only thing they were missing was a video of him committing the crime with "I'm glad I killed the bastards" on his T-shirt. That was literally the only thing missing from their case. Everything else, they had a location from his GPS on his phone. They had the murder weapon with his fingerprints on him. He'd actually tried burning his parents in the wood fire they had in their living room. Ugh, just the house must have stunk when he tried that. I know for a fact that you need to burn humans at like 200 degrees or something for about an hour to completely dissolve their ashes. And
it's 2,000 degrees.
2,000 degrees, sorry.
Very, very
for
hot.
a number of hours to reduce them to ashes. How did he possibly think he was going to get a wood stove in his house to that temperature? Anyway, so there's the story of one of the biggest morons. It would be funny if two people hadn't died. I'm making light of it, but his parents didn't deserve that, and his brother didn't deserve to live with that.
Well, I won't say much about this because I talked so much in the first half. But I do. The only thing I was going to say is it's a shame that he just didn't realize that all he had to do was move to New York State and become a member of Congress. He could have got away with it.
Wow. That was extreme. Tom, do you have any thoughts?
Well, the total overreach between his ambition. I mean, I don't know what's more overwhelming, the murderous desire or the overreach between what he was trying to do and the unspeakably limited extent to which he was able to do it, i.e. covering his tracks. I mean, this is really, I mean, even Bob Massingberg would have had a hard time with this one.
That's a Blackadder reference for those who don't.
Yes, again. A lawyer who could get anyone off anything, basically, but he would have his hands full with this. Also, I haven't really heard much of what you've said for the last 5 minutes. I'm still lost in the meta humor of the phrase. What was it you used? I've told one or two lies in my time. I'm not going to lie. My brain's still recovering from that. I mean, that's good. I mean, it was accidental, but that's the kind of humor Bob Monkhouse used to use, which had audiences in stitches.
Bit before my time, that. But yeah, that is the tale of someone who is criminally stupid. I do prefer the ones where no one dies, though, but, you know. I guess
Yeah, go on, finish up, Richard, sorry.
Okay, I guess there's a moral to this story, but I for the love of me, I can't see what it is. Don't tell lies, maybe? If you do tell lies, don't murder people. And if you're going to murder people, don't make it so ridiculously easy for the police to catch it. I literally don't know what the moral is.
Was he trying to do it? I mean, obviously,
no.
He was. So, did they ever diagnose him as having some sort of a mental disorder?
No, he was just entitled and lazy.
And as murderous as he is stupid.
No, there was literally no motive other than shame. He had no mental health issues. The concussion story was a load of crap, so there was nothing wrong with his brain. He just couldn't live with the fact that his parents were going to be very angry with him. With good reason, some might say.
Right, but that's what I'm saying is that, you know, most people can understand. I mean, his friends all knew. If the story's accurate, his friends all knew that he was doing it, you know, so...
His friends knew that he needed to pretend he had a job. That's what they knew.
So his friends knew that he needed to pretend he had a job, and so they helped him pretend he had a job. So basically everybody but the was he living off the family's dollar or something? Is that what I mean? How was he living at home, or was he living?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically what was happening was it's like, okay, well, son, we'll put you through these. They were probably paying his tuition too, I would imagine, or something like that. So you have to look. So from the standpoint of that, he was saying, okay, well, son, once you get a master's degree, then you have to get a job or something. You know what I mean? So basically, he had bilked them for at least 6 years of probably rent and money for his college and things like that, and with the help of his friends. And I mean, but I just don't see the thing where you have to, you know, at that point in time decide murdering your parents is the best way to go. I mean, obviously, I mean, people do it. You know, maybe he figured that was his way out. If he murdered his parents, who were probably well off, and probably
he was going to get the estate, which was sizable. He was also going to collect 500,000 life insurance. It would be $1 million, but he'd have to split it with his brother. So, yeah, he would have been all right, well off, if he'd got away with it.
I've got a way we can take this, a direction we can take this. Just looking at this guy, you think about, like, what is it that drives somebody to take somebody else's life. I mean, the motivation, the act, I mean, the lack of conscience, it's all staggering. Now, what I was going to say was, I'm not a big fan of horror films. But one thing I've come to realize over the past few years, listening to Mark Kermode, my favorite film reviewer, he loves horror films. And one of the things he really points out is that just as sci-fi is at its best when it's taking on philosophical issues, horror is at its best when looking at things that really do make us afraid and are really strange. So I wonder if any of you know any horror films that really explore the mind of a murderer, because I can only really
all
think
of them.
Hannibal. No, the first one, Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
What about that American Psycho movie?
Christian Bale.
Didn't that not actually happen though? Wasn't that the point of that? Didn't it? Wasn't it all a fantasy he cooked up in his head?
But that's how you're left. You're left wondering if that's the case. And it appears to. I think it's left ambiguous. One of those really irritating films that leaves it up to the viewer to decide. It might be even like that. I'm not sure if the intent is ever made clear.
Well, right, but I mean, isn't that sort of the whole idea behind the mind of a murderer like that? You never really get to understand. You never understand the reality that they're looking at. In my opinion, right? Like I could never see the world the way that Ted Bundy saw it. I could never see the world that way, because if I could, then I would do it, baby. You know what I mean? Maybe I'd feel like I needed to do it. So I never know about these different types of things because of the fact that, now believe me, I've met some people that are dodgy, you know, over the years, and you know, they're very strange. But some of them are very quiet. Some of them are people who have, you know, like that you'd never guess. And yet, you know, if you put a gun in their hand and tell them to go murder somebody, that they did it. You know what I mean? And so, obviously, they're going to say, "Well, I was a political, I was doing this," but you know, basically, you're not going around shooting people and kneecapping them unless you're some kind of a nut. But you know, this is the thing that you go from that, but you don't really know how they ever think. You know what I mean? It's a weird situation to try to understand the motivation of a person whose brain sort of doesn't work. In other words, I mean, because you know, I've met people, and again, some of them are very, very troubled by it, you know, or you know, have remorse for the rest of their life, can't stand it. I fit into that category. You know, but some people are like, yeah, no big deal. You know what I mean? Just go back to work. Just never think of it as anything other than just a job or some kind of an issue where that sort of morality gets into it. But interesting about this cat is he for somebody that was that good of a liar, how did he execute the murder so poorly?
Okay, first, he wasn't that good of a liar. His parents were just that trusting. And they were on to him. I mean, his dad found out because he ran the college and pretended to be Chandler to get a copy of his transcripts. So he wasn't that good of a liar.
Okay. So you're basically saying they were willing rubes in a way.
Yeah, they were giving him the benefit of a doubt a parent would give a child. Especially a younger child.
Right. I don't know.
I mean, he was just a moron, basically, who got himself into a situation by lying, then thought he could lie his way out of it. He fell into the con man's trap. You know, basically, all con men eventually get caught because they end up believing their own con. And that's what happened with him.
Right. But when you get caught, you know, obviously that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, a lot of people deny. I mean, that's the thing. You just deny it. Try to drag it out, deny it and drag it out. I mean, one thing I've learned in the last few years is you just deny everything and drag it out in court, and
That does seem to be the consensus. Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean,
Didn't
and then,
work in this case.
well, yeah, no, but he seemed like he would have been a likable guy. It was interesting to see what was his defense. What was his defense, if any, that he had? That he was in these circumstances and he was tagging around this phone. It seemed to me like it was a sewn up case.
It was absolute. It was so sewn up. It was ridiculous. The prosecution could have done half the work they did and still won this case. But as I said, they really crossed their T's and dotted their lowercase J's. They were not lazy. But and in his defense, he didn't have the best defense team. If he was to get a new trial, I wouldn't be surprised. Their whole defense was you can't prove it was. Who's to say it wasn't someone else? Was basically their defense. They weren't the best. There are a lot of videos online making fun of his defense team.
Yeah, it seems to me like that would have been I'm surprised they didn't go down the road if he was abused or something.
Well,
so, Richard, in his defense, he didn't have the best defense team. What are you trying to do to me tonight? You are turning my.
You like the lying. You like the lying comment, so I thought I'd go with that one.
You're doubling down, and each time you're pounding my head with a sledgehammer. My neurodivergent brain can't cope with this, man.
Yeah. We're going to have another reference to a 60s British comedian that nobody's heard of. Oh, Spot Monkhouse was in the 70s, wasn't it?
I don't know. Right. SoFlo says sociopath. I don't even know if he was a sociopath, SoFlo. I guess he must have been to be able to do that. But he was lazy and entitled and arrogant. Narcissistic personality disorder would be more than sociopathy. But because most sociopaths are competent. That's the thing, Narcissists are parent-led and sociopaths are child-led. They're usually a lot more charming, this guy, who speaks in a very dull and monotonous voice and, quite frankly, isn't that creative.
Did he get on the stand and do his own defense at all? Or?
No, his defense team wouldn't let him, which was probably for the best.
Wow.
People that are blatantly guilty and get on the defense stand, like Anthony Todd, Diane Downs, Betty White. No, Betty, different Betty from the 80s. They don't do themselves any favors when they're blatantly guilty and they get on the stand. Anthony Todd's probably the best one. Nancy Brophy, there's another good one. If you want to laugh, watch Nancy Brophy's cross-examination by the prosecution when she demanded she took the straight. Because she, any doubt you had in your mind is just gone by the time she's finished. Definitely guilty.
What do you think? I mean, Jodi Arias on the stand was pretty good. I have to say, she did well.
Jodi Arias was another one. If you're going to go to that much trouble of putting gas in your car, why would you take pictures of the crime scene? Why? It's just another one of those things where you're just like, that's why I can't commit crimes.
If you put Jodi Arias's mind in this guy's body, whenever he was committing the crime, other than taking the picture, because let's think of a combination killer that would have gotten away with it. You know what I mean? If you could, if you could take this guy, if you could take the mind of this killer and put it in this guy's body, after all this, I think that they would have.
You'd have him singing during his police interrogation, which I don't know. We've done a lot of true crime stories lately, so I'm going to move on to something else next week. I'm thinking lesser known cryptids.
Well, are we all supposed to come up with one?
Yeah. Everybody who comes up, who turns up next week, come up with a lesser known cryptid that we can discuss. That includes you, Nikki, you, Tom.
A lesser known cryptic.
A
Cryptid.
lesser known cryptid. You got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
I'll find something fucked up.
there's got to be
purpose.
something in Tennessee. I mean, there's all kinds of things in Tennessee.
In northern Tennessee, even supposedly, according to a story.
Right.
Northern Tennessee kills me, dude.
Well, I'm just
Northern,
saying,
like,
there's
northern Tennessee is like an 8-hour drive across. Tells you nothing.
you have to go across to go north.
No, what I'm saying is that the top of the state is just even all the way across.
Right.
We're a long state, not a tall state.
Yeah.
So saying north really doesn't help me any. It doesn't actually narrow anything down.
Right. The northern band of Tennessee.
Right. That's like me
So
saying I'm from the Memphis tri-state area. You don't know if I'm from, West Memphis, Arkansas, if I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, if I'm from Mississippi. You don't know where I'm at.
It's Arkansas, all right? It's not the Kansas City Chiefs. It's Kansas. It's Arkansas, all right?
Arkansas.
Yeah.
You're not English, or you're not English. You're not American. You can't.
There's no W, all right? It's Arkansas.
How would you pronounce Texarkana? Isn't that the same kind of a thing?
No.
Tex
It's not.
Arkan.
A.
Yeah, it's Texarkana.
Texarkana. It's like it's phonetically correct.
Texarkana.
But Arkansas and Kansas are different. First of all, like I believe that just the ARK and where it comes from, like the etymology of the word itself probably means that it's pronounced differently.
Is it not because that was part of the Louisiana Purchase, and at one point in time it was pronounced in French or something?
It very well could be. Like, I don't know. What I'm saying is that the etymology of Arkansas is probably different than of Kansas. Therefore, they would be pronounced differently because the history would be different. And I might be saying etymology and that be the wrong word. It starts with an E, and there's an ology in it. The history of words is what I mean. And so the origins, there we go. The origins etymology of the word.
That's etymology, yeah.
Okay.
Is that so entomology is the study of insects, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay.
So I was saying etymology.
Okay, so etymology. And I like entomins, so it's entomology.
My bushcraft is going pretty well so far. I've been trying to make fire with only the flint and steel, and it's not as easy as they make it look on videos, let me tell you that much. You'll be there a while.
Have a couple of curries first and add some methane.
Ah, good one. Classic, Tom. All right, so rules, lesser known cryptids. You can't use anything well known. No Bigfoot, no jackalope, no Loch Ness Monster, no Yeti, none of that. They have to be ones that hardly anyone's heard about. All right?
Yeah.
Okay.
There are one I know. I can think of one from Tom's neck of the woods, and then I can think of one from my neck of the woods. I can think of one from Nikki's neck of the woods. Richard. What do you got? I mean,
I've got a brilliant one. I don't even need to look. There's a really cool cryptid native to Cumbria that, well, we need to. The story needs to be told.
Right.
But
sounds good. Sounds really, really good.
Yeah, right.
I'm excited about that.
So that'll wrap us up for this week. We will return next week. Despite the hopes of many, it's good night from me and it's good night from them. Good night, everyone.
Night.
See you guys.